morning and welcome back to our Ask the Agronomist Facebook Live. We are here outside on a sunshiny day, that's for sure.
It's nice and beautiful out
It
this
is
morning.
nice and beautiful. And we have some people driving in and out, so we appreciate your patience as we work through that. Today we're going to be talking about some fungicide tips, and we have Phil here, an example from the field.
Yeah, there's been a lot of planes flying over. This last week has been kind of the time where, it seems like this is one of those things that when guys start flying it on, everybody makes the call and starts flying it on. So we just wanted to give some tips, to remind people, maybe what they need to be looking for instead of just saying, oh, the airplanes are going, let's make the call.
Yeah.
It's important to take time and go out in the field and look at a few things first.
So what are some considerations when making that decision?
So the first thing I think is most important is, and we've talked about it before in past Ask the Agronomist segments, is a disease triangle. I know it's a biology 101 thing, but number one, make sure that you have a susceptible host. So what's the susceptibility of the hybrid?
Right.
We have hybrid ratings in all of our product guide on each page. You can look and find out if it's moderately susceptible or if it's more susceptible. So those things are extremely important. If you have a hybrid that is very tolerant of a certain particular disease, then it's probably not going to pay. Research has shown over and over again it's not going to pay to put a fungicide on that particular hybrid if it's that disease. So the other thing is the environment. We've had pretty humid, I would say really heavy dews, obviously this morning. Really heavy dew kind of conditions. Humid, hot, or warm, those kind of things all lead to more disease development, especially on fungicides.
Yep.
If it turns off dry, that tends to be when the spore production kind of slows down.
Yeah.
So, keep those things in mind and also think about what's coming down the road too. So, and then the last thing I'd say is whether you have the pathogen present. So that's the third leg of the triangle. It's the pathogen in the field. So have you had, is it corn on corn? Do you have susceptible, do you have material in the field, more residue showing that's going to cause it to become infected? So.
Okay, let's go on to timing. So when would you say is the most susceptible time to spray?
Sure, so we're right around this, the tassel kind of broke off this one here on my example plant, but we're right around that R1 time period, which is typically when guys will be spraying fungicide. So that's the rough approximation, I'd say.
Right.
It doesn't have to be right at R1. Some guys go a little earlier. It depends on the disease pressure, and that's what I want guys to really pay attention to. If you have no disease pressure, so I'll just go ahead and kind of give guys a rough idea of what to look for. So this is the primary ear right here. These plants may be a little behind what some guys have, but this would be the primary ear leaf. So if you look 3 leaves down from that, on this leaf here, if you're seeing disease on that leaf at tassel, on over 50% of the plants in the field, then you might want to be considering a fungicide, especially if that's a more susceptible hybrid to that particular disease, if it's something like gray leaf spot or northern corn leaf blight or something. So be looking at those leaves. Don't just go ahead and spray because everybody else is spraying. Make sure you're paying attention to that, because you have roughly, when the corn plant tassels, you're going to have about 2 months or 60 days to maturity. So you're trying to protect that window.
Right.
But how long do our fungicides last? It depends. You got to look on the label, but typically it's 14 to 21 days or somewhere in that 2 to 3 week time period.
Okay.
So you don't want to put it out there too early and then miss it. It becomes ineffective, and then the disease sets in, comes up the plant, and starts getting the ear leaf. Because once you start getting infection on this ear leaf and above, that's when you really start taking a yield hit.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about options of fungicides then.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I'm not going to go through the list of trade names and stuff because obviously there's lots and lots of generics and so forth. But the thing to remember with fungicides is look at what you're spraying. A lot of times guys today spray a combination, so mixed modes of action, which is typically a good thing. That's what we encourage people on herbicides and fungicides and so forth to do. A lot of the fungicides being sprayed today, like Headline Amp or Quilt Excel or Stratego Yield, those kind of things all have 2 modes of action in them. And those two major modes of action that do the best to protect against fungus, fungal pathogens are typically the strobilurins and the triazoles.
Mm-hmm.
So guys may not be used to those words, but those strobilurins are typically your preventative ones. So if you think about how herbicides are, a lot of times they end in the same letters. So strobilurin, the end of the word ends in IN. So if you look on the label and see that active ingredient and it ends in IN, it's a strobilurin. So, and a lot of times they'll say it's more of a preventative, that kind of thing on the label, but that's your way of helping you out.
Yeah.
Triazole is the same way. It ends in OLE typically, or OL typically, that gives you that indication that it's a triazole. And typically those will have a somewhat of maybe both components, but more of a curative component. So needs to be sprayed when the disease is present, because it's stopping spore production, things like that. It's not preventing it for weeks to come.
Right.
So just some important things to keep in mind, on the fungicide part. There's lots of them out there. There's lots of generics, but take a look at some of those active ingredients, and pay attention to the endings of the names.
Okay,
so.
Good to know. And I'm sure if any of our viewers have any questions, you are more than happy to help them.
Yeah, we're always here to help.
Always here to help, so just call on in. All right, well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. No, I think that pretty well covers it. Hopefully we can maybe talk about soybeans in the future, and our corn plants are looking pretty good, and I know a lot of guys have pretty good looking corn around the state and so forth, so hopefully that continues.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today, Phil, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Have a good day.